So a perfect example, if we look at our data set we'll be using, if we look at the fact sales table here, when we look at the fact sales table and we look at the column, there is, for instance, units sold. We can see units sold, we can see unit price, and all that. But for instance, we need to be able to say or show the total units sold. That would mean adding up all these other values of the units sold. Now, in such a situation, that's where you then use a DAX function. There are two types of DAX functions. We have calculated columns, which we calculate row by row. For instance, you can calculate a profit per a particular product. And then we also have what we call measure. Measures help you to calculate, dynamically, based on filters and visuals. And an example would be like the total units sold. So what we want to do, which is one of a DAX function, is to create a measure. So we want to calculate all these total units sold, right? We want to know from face value, we can't get the total units sold. And so we want to create a measure, and then we'll then use it as a visual. So you understand why it's important to be able to write a measure or a DAX function. So to do that, let me just open this pane. I'm sure you remember how to import your data set. So once you've done that, you have this view, and then you can close and apply. I don't want to close and apply because I still want us to come back here and reference some of the columns, for instance. So the first thing I would do is I will just apply. So I've imported these two, there are two spreadsheets, but then they have two sheets in them. And so you have 4 queries. So once I apply, we should be able to see this data or this table in our main visual where we'll create the measures and our visuals. So just give it a minute and then we'll write our fix DAX function, which is a measure. This is completed. We'll now be able to see these 4 queries, as you can see here on our main visual page under the data, right? So once you've imported your file, you've gone to Power Query and you've checked everything, you can then close out and apply, or just apply, so that your data set would appear here. Now, to write your first DAX measure, to create a measure, if the first thing you need to do is you need to select the particular table you would be working with. In this case, we'll be working with fact sales table. And then once it's selected, you tap on this, you select it. Once you select it, it brings you to this table tools. If you look at my top left, where you have file, home, insert, modeling, and all that. And then you can see new measure, right here. Then you select new measure. What it does is it gives you a box for you to write your formula. Under the table, it then creates like a column for you so you can see measure. That's because we've not finished writing it and we've not saved. So Power BI automatically gives you the name of the measure as measure, which you can change. So what we want to do is we want to get the total sum of the units that have been sold. So we would name the text before the equals to is the name of the measure. So we will call it total units sold. And then after the equals to, you then write the particular function or formula you want. In this case, we want to sum all the units sold. So to do that, you write the keyword sum, and then you can see you can select it from the option. And what Power BI does automatically gives you all the tables, because the tables and their respective columns, so that you can select which of them you want to sum the total for. And in this case, we know it is our fact sales. If you look back here, right, it's the fact sales, but fact sales as the table, and which column are we do we want to sum? is the unit sold. So you write fact sales, and then we know that we're under fact sales, and you come down and look for units sold, and then select it. You hit tab, it selects everything for you, you close your bracket. What this basically does is it sums up all the units sold that we have in our data set. So that's here, this bit, this unit sold here, it sums up everything, right? Once you're done, you can hit enter. We tap on this green bit here that was here. It also means commit. And once you're done, it creates the measure for you. As you can see, we have this total units sold here. So you've completed. Congratulations, you've just written your first measure. It's a very simple one because we just want to sum. And how do you then use it? How is it very important? So you use measure like this when you want to show a summary of something. So we'll create a quick visual so you see how this measure that we just created is important. So let's just say I will use a card, right? And in the card, what I want to do is I will move this total unit sold measure we just created to the value, right? It's loading a bit. But what we'll now see is the actual total unit sold value on this card. It's very important or useful when you're creating a dashboard. Sometimes you just want to give an overall summary of certain things that the team has done. So if this was a sales team and you're creating a dashboard for the sales team, you're basically telling them that they've sold 5,000 units sold, maybe across the year or across the month. So right now it's showing 5K. We can change this to show the actual value because what Power BI does is automatically just gives you 5K, or it could be 5,200. And so if you want to show everything, you look at my right hand side, just beside data, there's this visualization menu, right? Where we dragged the total units sold to the value. Beside the add data to your visual, that's the one in the middle with this paintbrush, you select it, your format visual, under format visual, and then you can then begin to edit this card. We won't do much of the editing here or now because we're focusing on task functions and measures. But just so I can show you how you can see the actual number, we'll come to call out here. We expand it and we come to value. And then just bear with me, under value. Yep. Under value, we should, let me change this from cards to the total units sold. Then under, when you change, under apply settings, under call out for, and you select it to total units sold, under value, you will then see this display units. And then it's currently on automatic, which is Power BI's default. We can then just change it to none. And when you do that, what it does is Power BI then gives you the whole figure. So we are saying there's a total units sold of 5,288. So it summed up all the units sold column, and this is the sum. So this is how DAX functions or measures are very useful and important. We can do a more complex or two more examples of measure. For instance, we can count the total number of orders. For right now, we're summing the total units sold. How about we count the total orders? To do that, it's the same process. You make sure your fact sales is selected, and then you click on new measure. And then what happens is it gives you that box for you to write your formula as we did the first time. And this time around, we can call it total orders, right? Because we want to count the total number of orders that this business has made. And then we start with, we want to count them once, so we'll probably use the distinct count function. And then again, we know is the fact sales table. But then what do we want to count? It's the order IDs we want to count. So we come to fact sales order ID, hit tab. close the bracket. And what this basically is doing is going to count the total number of orders that this business has made. Basically, it's counting each individual order in the order ID column. So if we come back here to the order ID, to our Power Query, sorry, you can see the order ID here, where you are here. So we're going to count all this order ID to know how many orders the business has. That's what basically this function is doing. You hit enter, sets it for you. You use it on the right hand side now. Total orders. And again, you create a card for it just as a summary. We usually use, you can use the measure to show summary. You can also use it for your main, any kind of chart. So, but based on total orders, it's more like a summary. So again, we can use a card to visualize it. So there are two ways to go about it. You can go through the process again of, selecting a card, or you could come here, right click, and then copy visual. Now, once you copy the visual, you can then use Control V to paste it. It duplicates it for you. But basically, what we will just do is we will change the column that this has, because right now it's a duplicate of this. So instead of total units sold, which is here, we then make it total orders. So we drag total orders from our data into this value, and then we should see our total orders. So it's saying we have a total orders of 400, but the unit sold, the total is 5,288. Okay.